So good afternoon, everybody. We're still waiting for a few people to join in, I believe, to get a quorum of either of the committees. But as we're waiting for that, I'll just say welcome everybody to this regular meeting of the two Turlock Subbasin technical advisory committees for the East and the West Turlock Subbasin GSAs. So I have here a slide up that you've all seen plenty of times before. It just reminds everybody to do the basic Zoom practices and courtesies. I think the one thing I'll mention in there is that we have a public comment period listed at the front end of the agenda. And we also will be taking comments on individual items as needed. Just send something in the chat, raise your hand, and when the appropriate time comes, ask your question. Any one of those can work. I'll also note that any meeting materials are going to be posted online on turlockgroundwater.org. And then this meeting is currently being recorded, and we will post it to the portion of the website where this meeting is located, and also on YouTube. So with that being said, I tried to kill as much time as possible. Michael, I'll look to you to try and see what things are looking like as far as attendance and quorum issues and all of that. So I'll lead to you.
Thank you, Herb. Good afternoon, fellow water nerds. Looks like I only have 6 people here from the West Turlock GSA TAC right now. So I see representation from Turlock Irrigation District, Leandro from Dale High, Mike Pitcock from Waterford for Hickman, Miguel from the City of Modesto, Walt and Christy from Stennis County, Lacey from Merced County, and Carlos Guerrero from the City of Turlock. Welcome aboard, Carlos. That's 7. According to Jennifer, that's 7. So therefore, at 2:02, I call the meeting of the West Turlock Subdivision Technical Advisory Committee to order. I would like to add a note, though. I'd like to call this meeting to order in honor of Walter Ward with Stennis County. Tomorrow is his last day as a county employee. He's retiring again. And Walt's been very involved with water issues in our region for many years, first with Modesto Irrigation District, and more lately with Stennis County. So, Madam Clerk, make sure the minutes reflect that we did open this meeting in honor of Walter Ward. Thank you. Oh, so I hand over to my friends on the East Turlock to open their portion of the meeting. Are they representing East Turlock? I don't see Mike or Sarah.
Hi, this is Lacey McBride with Merced County, and I don't see Sarah on here either, but as the vice chair of the TAC, I can go ahead and kick it off, and if we get Sarah on here, all the better. So for the East Turlock Subbasin GSA TAC, we have Matt Beeman from Merced Irrigation District, Walt Ward. Is Walt still on? I just saw him, but now I don't see him.
Yeah, he's still on.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
on.
Okay, great. Walt Ward with Stennis County and myself with Merced County. Is there anybody else from the East Turlock Subbasin GSA TAC that I'm missing?
So this is Mike Tietza. I'm called in via voice only.
Great, thanks, Mike. So it looks like we have a quorum and we can convene the East Turlock TAC as well.
Okay, so wonderful. So good afternoon, everybody. So this is a joint meeting of the West Turlock Subbasin GSA Technical Advisory Committee and the East Turlock Subbasin GSA Technical Advisory Committee. First, we've called to order. Our next item on the agenda is public participation. This is the time set aside for members of the public to directly address the Technical Advisory Committee on any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter purview of the TACs. You can make general comments now or save them to the specific agenda items. So with that, I'll open the floor to public participation. Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to item number 4, approval of the minutes. These are the minutes of the November 18th and December 9th special joint meetings of the West and East Turlock Subbasin GSAs. So I need a motion for approval from the West Turlock Technical Advisory Committee. First off, if you've had a chance to review those minutes, or you have ideas for changes or substitutions.
I'll motion, Michael.
Thank you, Andrew. So I have a motion from Delhi. We have a second.
Second, Waterford.
Thank you, Mike Pitcock. So we have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Okay, we do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, these two sets of minutes stand approved from November 18th and December 9th. Over to you, Lacey.
Great. For the East Turlock Subbasin TAC, is there a motion to approve the minutes from November 18th and December 9th?
Move approval, Walt.
Walt? Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Matt Beeman. I believe Jessica Johnson would prefer if we did a roll call vote. Is that right, Jesse?
That is accurate. Thank you very much, Lacey.
Great, thank you. Walt Ward,
Yes.
Matt Beeman,
Yes.
and Lacey McBride votes yes. Passes 3-0. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lacey. So moving on to item number 5, this is for the West Turlock Subbasin Technical Advisory Committee group only. It's a approval or consideration of a resolution to allow us to continue to recognize the state of emergency proclaimed by the governor on March 4th, and that remains in effect, and more importantly, reauthorizing continued remote teleconference meetings of our Technical Advisory Committee for the next 30 days or so. So again, this emergency resolution has to be adopted every 30 days to allow us to continue to meet via teleconference rather than in person. So with that, any questions? Hearing none, we have a motion for approval.
I'll motion, Michael. Yeah.
And so we have a second. Or do you guys want to go back to meeting in person again?
Second, and Michael City Molesto.
There you go. I thought a little bit of pressure would help Miguel. We have a motion and a second. Jennifer, we can do a voice vote, right?
Roll call vote, please, Chair Cook.
Okay, over to you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Member Alvarez,
Yes.
Member Guerrero,
Yes.
Member Maldonado,
Yes.
Member McBride,
Yes.
Member Montalbano,
Yes, sorry, I was multitasking.
no worries. Thank you. Member Pitcock,
Yes.
Member Ward,
Yes.
and Chair Cook.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that resolution passes. Moving on to item number 6, which is the main event for today. This is to review and discuss the well construction permitting and proposed processes for constructing new wells or rehabilitating wells in Stennis County and Merced County. And Lacey from Merced and Walt from Stennis County are going to talk to us about that. So over to you guys. Thank you.
Walt, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a bit of a tag team, perhaps. Christie's on the call, Mike Tietz is on the call, we've got you. We have parallel processes, I think, and I'm going to start out with share screen. I hope I can do this right, if somebody will let me, Herb. So
You should be able to now that I've taken down the agenda.
okay, all right, I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint, and you guys let me know if you see a slide. Do you?
Yeah, well, no,
No?
not right now.
Well, I don't know what I'm doing very well. let me just start and just try to wing it. When Stennis County put together their groundwater ordinance, it's called County Code 9.37, and this was first put together in the fall of 13, and then it was modified a year later. And when it was modified in the fall of 14, it embraced a number of the principles related to Sigma, and so it took on this notion of sustainability and avoidance of undesirable results, etc. And so the ordinance itself, the way that it's been implemented over the last 7+ years, it kind of hinges on exemptions versus non-exempt. For example, by definition in the ordinance, a DeMinimis extractor is defined as less than 2 acre-feet per year, and they are exempt from conditions of the ordinance insofar as having to demonstrate, sustainability, etc. A second category of exemption is a replacement well, and this is a quid pro quo. There's a well that's been in operation, meeting a certain groundwater demand. It's old, something's gone wrong with it physically, the casing is collapsed, something has malfunctioned, it's outlived its useful service life, and the owner wants to replace it. And our condition is that you plug and abandon, destroy the old well as soon as you have the new well up and running, that it's not serving any new demand, that it's not installed with any greater capacity, and that it is in fact just a replacement well. And quite a few of those have come through, and you got to pay attention and be particular about verification and a number of things, but they work, and the replacement wells are by definition exempt. The third category of exemption is the one that I want to talk to you guys about today, and that's really the largest category, and that is where a landowner wants to drill a well, and it's only to augment an existing demand that is served by primarily surface water. So in other words, and Michael and Debbie, I'm just using TID as an example. As it turns out, probably most of what we call supplemental wells have occurred in the TID service area. An applicant comes in, well driller submits an application to drill a well, identifies it as agriculture. I have taken the point to call every applicant whenever one of these come in, and the first step we do is we contact the irrigation district in which the well is located, whether it's on the west side, wherever. You guys get the picture. If it's an MID, OID, TID, east side, west end, Patterson, etc. We contact them and say, hey, we've got this applicant in, he's in your service area, is he one of your customers? And more than 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100, it comes back and goes, yeah, that APN by that name is one of our surface water customers. Sometimes there's been a change in land ownership and you got to chase some of those details down, but that's no big deal. what you're verifying is that the acres served is in fact met as a primary source by surface water provided by one of our local irrigation districts. In some cases, I've gone out to the property and met the owner and kind of walked around and kind of looked and seen, for myself what's going on. Most of the time you verify by looking at aerial photos, and you can kind of see that it's a fixed orchard that's within the boundaries of, 4 surrounding streets, and they're going to drill a well, and the only purpose is to supplement when needed, if ever, the surface water. And in most cases, they'll say, well, maybe a little bit of frost protection, maybe pre-season, post-season, the water's not in the canal or the pipeline yet. I don't trust government. Something's going to happen in the future. There's going to be droughts. What happens if, I don't get all my surface water? I want to be able to have a well, and they have every legal right to have a well, because every landowner has a correlative legal right, almost like a riparian right, to the surface water that's below, to the groundwater that's below their property. So we've been permitting these and verifying that, number one, they're in the irrigation district, that they're a ratepayer, meaning that they're a primary supply of surface water, by calling them and going out to their property, verifying, what are your intentions. Most of them say, I hope I never have to use it. It's really that simple. There's another provision, though, and this is pretty important because we saw Sigma coming, and we knew there would be a day when the GSPs would be adopted, in which case the ordinance probably, at one point we thought would just go away. Where we see its role now is maybe as a local safety net, kind of to catch some activities. I just had a box pop up, says my connection's unstable. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. So one other thing that we verified through our ordinance was that the public agency involved, and going back to the TID example, has in fact adopted a groundwater management plan that covers their service area. That was another part of the test for verification of this supplemental groundwater that would be added to their primary supply surface water. And now that the GSPs have been adopted, groundwater management plans are obsolete. We knew those were going to go away as soon as Sigma was adopted, and that they would only exist in this interim period during which the ordinance sort of acted like a bridge to span that period of time between Sigma inaction, becoming law, and then the actual GSPs being adopted and the GSA governance be put in place. There is a section of our ordinance that speaks to the question when none of these exemptions can be met. They're not DeMinimis, it's not a replacement, it's not intended to supplement an existing demand that's provided primary source by surface water. Well, that triggers CEQA, and we've done maybe 6 in the last, since 2014. We've gone through 6 fully blown, CEQA initial study mitigated neg decks, a couple on the west side of the county, a couple in the center part of the county, a couple over on the east side. So there's always the CEQA review that can be provided for the applications that are non-exempt. And again, I'm only talking here about County Code Chapter 9.37. I'm going to complicate things in a little bit when I talk about a different county code called 9.36. Just park that for now and kind of keep your head on 9.37. So 9.37 is called groundwater. An application comes in. Every application is first evaluated against 9.37. If it's found to be exempt, either because it's de minimis, replacement, or just this supplemental concept, it doesn't go through any further review. Now we have GSPs that have been adopted. And so let's stay on the TID example. A well comes in tomorrow, and it's in the West Turlock Subbasin area, in the Turlock groundwater subbasin, for which a GSP has been adopted. Maybe not tomorrow is a good example, say next Tuesday. Our proposal is that we would bundle up the package of everything that the well driller submitted, and we would ship it off to the appropriate GSA that has the jurisdiction within which the groundwater basin where the well is located, and ask the GSA to make a determination of compliance with their own GSP. And how that determination is made, the county is not dictating or mandating or structuring in any way. We're just asking the GSA to make a determination. And the answer can only be yes or no. There's no other, nothing in between. And if it comes back that yes, it's in compliance with our GSP, maybe it's a replacement well, maybe it's one of these supplementals. It's still going to be on surface water. They just want to have a backup well, whatever. And if the GSA responds to the county and says, yes, that's in compliance, we're done. We're done with 9.37. It's found to be exempt, and it'll move on to the other side of the house where the actual well construction permit gets issued. That's County Code 9.36. We're asking that this be, a participatory process. Let's talk to one another. Let's engage. Let's take the opportunity to ask ourselves, how can we best serve our needs? And what I mean by that is we have a client who's a customer who's requesting to have a well drilled, so that's a need. But also we as a bigger group have a need, and that is to sustainably manage the groundwater resources of the basin. So I think there's a smart way to do this. In particular, say this applicant, his name is Walter Ward, and he submits an application, and you go, the GSA gets it, and they take a look at it and go, man, that dude's right in there where we're missing some information. We would like to collect, some water level readings. So the GSA could be proactive in this process. And even though they're saying that Mr. Ward's proposal is in compliance with the GSP, and that's, is the dialogue back and forth with the county, the GSA too could turn to Mr. Ward and write a letter to him and say, hey, we got this from the county. You want to drill a well? We're okay with that, but we need this additional information. And so you can condition your approval. And I think that's smart. I mean, you could really begin to engage in active, real-time management of collecting additional monitoring information, water quality, extraction, water levels, whatever it may be. In the meantime, your approval of it being in compliance comes back over to the county, and we can then proceed in a ministerial process. In other words, we're not triggering CEQA under the review of 9.37 because we're not applying any discretion. So the other aspect of this would be, what if the GSA gets a bundled up package and it's from Mr. Ward, and you look at it and you go, you know, that's not going to fly. That's not in compliance. That was nothing we considered in the water budget. It's not anything that we considered in the proposed development. It's outside the bounds of an irrigation district. He's not going to be on any surface water. He's sole source new demand. That's a no. And your answer back to the county is no, this is not in compliance. That will trigger CEQA. We'll take it from there. And then with the interaction and involvement of everybody involved, as you know, when you go, when you produce a CEQA document, it is a document that is provided to the public at large, to the world at large. And so there's an open, transparent process that will unfold when the GSA determination is made that the proposed groundwater activity is not consistent with the GSP. So we've been doing this for the last couple of years in the 2 other basins in Stennis County, for which GSPs were prepared, being that they're a critical condition of overdraft, and it's been working. Most of those have been west side. There's been a couple up in the northern triangle, but the majority has been the west side of the county on the other side of the San Joaquin River. And in every case, the particular GSAs that have come back, PID, West End, Del Porto, have said that they've made their own determination. They've come back with us to us and said, yeah, this is in compliance with the GSP. And with that, we've, moved the well construction permitting over to the 936 side of the house, and found that the exemption applies insofar as 937 is involved. I'm just talking off the top of my head. Am I making any sense? I'm getting a lot of silence.
It made a lot of sense to me. So just to get an understanding, because obviously I haven't read your ordinance for a while. So if you were in one of the white areas, you weren't covered by a GSA, you'd be subject to CEQA, or you'd be prohibited from drilling in the first place?
Think about it, Michael. After the GSPs are adopted, there's nowhere in the county for which there is not a GSP and a corresponding GSA. There's no more white area of the county.
Okay.
But it may be the county that is that member agency of the GSA. Think of West Turlock Subbasin again. Turlock Subbasin. Think of the West Turlock GSA. The well is located in the West Turlock Subbasin GSA, but more specifically, it's located in a West Turlock Subbasin GSA member agency jurisdiction, right? So say one comes in and it's in the West Turlock Subbasin GSA. We package this up. We send it off to the GSA. The GSA then, develops some sort of process and circulates the document and says, hey, what do you guys think about this? And this particular one happens to be right down in, can't think of it, right in the Hillmar area. Well, that'd be outside the county. It's in the unincorporated area of the county. That I would think that particular member agency probably has some bit of a role to respond to the GSA now asking the question, or maybe it's done under some group process. Maybe I don't know, because I'm not going to dictate that to you guys.
Right.
I'm going to send it off to package it up, send it off to the GSA in which the well is located, and say, hey, is this in compliance with the GSP? Yes or no. And any answer that comes back that is not yes, can trigger CEQA.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Thank you.
Now, let's allow that we're going to grow this as we go. We do not have the time to put our well permitting on hold and say, hey, this is going to take 60, 90, 180 days to figure out. That's not acceptable. And I'm not trying to be demanding here. I'm just saying that's in the real world, that's not going to work. We're going to do our best with what we got to roll out a process that we think is fair, that we think is measurable, that we think has benefits. And it'll be an iterative thing. I think as we get better and we get smarter and I'm open to improvement in all ways. And if we can make it better, by all means, let's make it better. But let's get started.
Sounds good. All
And
right.
I'm not even going to talk about the other side of the house. That's a different kind of deal. When it comes back into the county with yes, it is in compliance, then we'll push it over to the other side of the house. There are some secret things that now have to happen in all well cases, but let's not confuse that with what we're talking about here today.
All right. That sounds great. Lacey, you want to chip in with Merced County? Yours is similar but different. So.
Yeah, and I'll try to keep it short and not too confusing because it is similar but different. So Merced County, very, very similar to Stennis County, has a groundwater mining and export ordinance in place since 2015. That ordinance has a well prohibition in it, which says no new wells are to be drilled in Merced County, but there are exemptions. So there are exemptions for domestic DeMinimis wells. So those are wells providing 2 acre-feet or less for domestic use. There's an exemption for replacement wells, which is a like for like well. If you're drilling in the same aquifer with the same water use and the same size well, you can replace that within a quarter mile. We have a water agency exemption for water agencies who have those groundwater management plans in place that Walt had talked about. We have a certain exemption for them. And then we've been working with basically the general rule of CEQA that a project is exempt if it's not causing any of those impacts. And so we've got kind of a general rule exemption. So as Merced County started thinking about, again, I'm using a lot of Walt's language. We look at our ordinance as a bridge to SGMA as well. And as Merced County leadership started thinking about the kind of coming to the end of this bridge, they started thinking about how the ordinance would change in order to bring in the GSAs who have the responsibility given to them under SGMA, not for well permitting, but for managing extraction of groundwater and the sustainability piece of groundwater. And so the change that Merced County is proposing to their ordinance, and there was the first reading of this amended ordinance just took place on Tuesday, January 25th. The second reading, hearing and action to adopt the amended ordinance is scheduled to take place on February 8th. So just so you know the timeline for Merced County. Merced County is amending their ordinance to basically add a new exemption. And this new exemption is for any property that's within a groundwater sustainability agency that has an adopted groundwater sustainability plan. So in Merced County, that's actually all of our subbasins. It's all of our areas in our subbasins because every subbasin has an adopted plan. We're not waiting until that plan is approved by DWR because there's that 2-year approval, but it's just an adopted plan because GSAs are implementing based on that plan right away. So you're exempt if you're in a GSA with an adopted plan and the GSA is not designated probationary. And the requirement is for the new well application that's submitted to the county to come with a letter or a notice from the GSA that says that this proposed well is consistent with the groundwater sustainability plan in that GSA's jurisdiction. So you have to have this consistency determination that's made by the GSA. And then once the county gets the application and the consistency determination, very similar to Stanislaus County, it's a ministerial action to approve that permit and provide that permit to the applicant. Any conditions or limitations that the GSAs want to put on those consistency determinations, that's all up to the GSA, and it'll all be enforced by the GSA. So the county is not enforcing any conditions because this is a ministerial action. And the other difference here is that Merced County does not have that extra step that Stanislaus County has to allow for a CEQA analysis to be led by the county. If the GSA says, no, this well is not consistent with our groundwater sustainability plan, then the county will not issue a permit and it ends it right there. The responsibility then is with the applicant and the GSA to work out how do they get to a project or a well that could be deemed consistent with the GSP. And so the county's kind of stepping out of that. All these changes to the Merced County ordinance are really intended to take the discretion out of the county. So the county's on the sustainability piece, the county's not making any of those discretionary decisions. It's just a ministerial action as long as there's a consistency determination by the GSA. I have just 3 really easy slides, and I think maybe they show the process. And I gave them to Herb because I too am technologically challenged and I can't share a slide off the equipment I'm using. So Herb, would it be possible to pull those up really quick?
Yeah, I'm working on it right now. Just give me a
great.
quick second.
Yeah. One of the differences I wanted to mention between Merced County and Stanislaus County that I think is important, and I think it recognizes the differences between the ordinances and that it makes sense for Stanislaus County to keep some of their discretionary piece, is that Stanislaus County spent, Walt, gosh, did you spend months or years working on your PEIR to launch all of your CEQA analyses off of?
A couple of years and $585,000.
So Stanislaus County spent $500,000 and a couple years working on a PEIR that could be a launching point for any of these CEQA analyses for their wells that they've gone through. Merced County doesn't have that in place. And in the past 7 years since we've had this well ordinance in place, no applicant has chosen to go through the CEQA process in Merced County because we don't have a PEIR. And so there's a lot of unknowns to doing that CEQA piece, that CEQA evaluation in Merced, the cost, the time, and the result. Are they actually going to get a well out of it is all really unknown. And so nobody's chosen to go through with that. And so I think that's a really big difference just to note between the two ordinances. So for Merced County, this is how it works when it comes to the county. So we are suggesting that the GSAs have the opportunity to use the application that the Merced County already put together for the permit if they want to use that application. And we've actually been working with all of the GSAs in Merced County for several months to pull together any supplemental information that they might want included in that application, so they don't have to put together their own well consistency application. They can just use the county's application and have the applicant fill out what they're already going to have to fill out for the county We'll include some supplemental questions that the GSAs want, so they can do that. So the applicant will pull that application just off the website, go to the GSA. If it's a DeMinimis domestic application, they can come straight to the county because it's exempt and the application will be approved. If the GSA finds the well application is consistent, the application and the consistency determination comes to the county, files the application, and that can be approved. And if the well is not within a GSA, which Merced County does have some very small areas, a little bit out in East Turlock, east of the basin boundary, that's still in Merced County, but is not in a GSA. And there's just a little bit west of I-5 in those foothills on the west side that are still in Merced County, but not in a GSA. Those two areas would just file an application with the county and they would go through the existing ordinance process. So the process doesn't change for them because they're not in a GSP. Can you go to the next slide? So domestic de minimis exempt, the county reviews and permits. Wells outside of a GSA is subject to the ordinance, so the county reviews and goes through the process. And then the one that you guys are most interested in is the wells that are within a GSA. So this is the order that it has to happen in. The county is not referring these out. These are going to the applicants going to the GSA first and then coming to the county. So it's reviewed by the GSA. The GSA provides that consistency with the GSP determination. And then the applicant can come with their full package and file that permit with the county. Very similar to Stanislaus, Stanislaus County, the county of Merced still reviews for the construction standards. So the Department of Environmental Health, the Division of Environmental Health inspects the wells. And then the GSA regulates the wells according to whatever criteria that they have. I think I have one more slide. So if the GSA does not find the well project consistent, so this is the difference with Stanislaus County. Merced County would not permit that well. So that's that discretionary decision that Merced County is pulling out of this ordinance for the sustainability piece. And so we would encourage the applicant to work with the GSA to figure out how to create a project that would be considered consistent with the GSP. The county won't enforce conditions, but the GSAs have the ability and the authority to do that. And then the county remains responsible for well construction, permitting, inspection. Also, we heard in our workshops that we've had over the past 8-9 months that GSAs, they're still small agencies, even though many of the 2020 GSPs, they've been around for a couple of years. Well, even Turlock has been around since 2017. It's still a small agency. And so Merced County's Division of Environmental Health, they are willing and they have offered to help the applicant kind of help fill out the application. So it's some of that hand holding that I think the GSAs are worried that we don't have the time and the ability to help somebody fill out this application. Environmental health, they won't tell them what to put on the application, but they'll help guide them to where they can find the information that they need to help fill out that application. And so I think the county is trying to be a really good partner with the GSAs and provide support for this process going forward. But the county can't, fill out the application for them, but they still can provide some of that assistance that the GSAs might need in the beginning when they're still trying to put their policies and their procedures in place for handling these as they come. And so that's just a super kind of quick overview. Are there any questions on Merced's process?
Well, it's kind of got me thinking, I watched a video this morning of the Board of Supervisors meeting the other day, and I was the deputy director of planning, was talking about, rather than in Stennis County where you fill out an application and then go to the GSA, this will save the applicants kind of time and money because they'll just ask whether their well is consistent with the GSP. But as I'm thinking about this, the GSAs are going to have to come up with application materials to make this consistency finding, like how deep is the well, where is it screened, what's the production output, because you can't make a consistency finding without some of that information. So that's the difference.
Yeah,
burden
and
there.
that's kind of what I mentioned in the beginning, that for Merced County, we're working on the well permit application that hopefully will ask those questions that the GSA wants to know. So the GSA doesn't have to create, if they don't want to, they don't have to create their own application and kind of recreate the wheel. If the county has a supplemental page on it, includes information that the GSAs want to know, you can tell your applicant, all they have to do is fill out the county's application that's going to ask the question that you as the GSA want to know.
Okay.
Hopefully we can save some extra steps by working together that way.
Yeah, that was my email to the board. It's like, we'd like to work with you to put in the application materials together. I didn't realize until I saw the board of supervisors meeting that had been fleshed out as much as I had already. So it was good to learn. The other thing too, just to kind of as a thought, as an old CEQA practitioner, there can be environmental impacts associated with a well that have nothing to do with Sigma, right? So terrestrial resources, there's a giant garter snake, there's a Swainson's hawk out there, there's a historic resource, right? This well has no impact on Sigma whatsoever, but it's right in the middle of a Native American burial ground. GSA is not going to say inconsistent with Sigma. And then I'm concerned that the county says, well, it's ministerial. Ministerial only has limitations when there's potential CEQA impact. So just be kind of aware that I think it's portrayed to the board that this is, hey, this gets the county right out of any CEQA stuff. This is fantastic. All the burden and danger is passed on to GSAs, and I just don't want to think it's a get out of jail free card.
No, I think you're right. I think there's even in the well construction standards, there's even some water quality issues that could at some point lead to CEQA.
Yeah,
That's
that's
insurance, I think, is a big one.
yeah, that's the same in Stennis County because of the Powers versus Stennis County, the litigation that ended up going all the way to the state Supreme Court. It came back and a judgment has now been entered into court that says the Stennis County practice of treating all well construction permits as ministerial is unlawful. That in circumstances, CEQA has to be applied, and our council has told us when a well construction permit gets over to the actual well permitting of the ceiling depth and the casing material and all the things that go along with how you build a proper well, there is CEQA that gets applied in all cases, and it's driven by Section 2, Bulletin 74, Section 2, Part 8, A, B, and C, and it's water quality and potential contamination and floodplain issues. But that's not anything to do with what I was talking about earlier as far as 937 and the ordinance as it pertains to groundwater is concerned. So we're not, let's not weed those together. We can keep them separate.
Gotcha.
Certainly, if somebody has to do CEQA for 937, they'd be really smart to also do the 936 side and already have those questions answered, so that when the permit, if and when it does get approved for issuance, they're not triggering some subsequent CEQA that they didn't otherwise anticipate. So, I mean, that's just being smart. I think what Lacey and I have both described, though, are two different paths that really get to the same place. and that is whether or not new wells that are being proposed to be drilled are in compliance with the sustainable groundwater management.
Right.
And you know, I'm open, and I think everybody's open to improving and changing. Maybe we see that Merced's is working a lot better, and Stennis County says, hey, let's copy what they're doing. That seems to be a better way to go. Or maybe Merced starts doing, they go, God, you know, we shouldn't have done that. Let's change directions. Let's maybe rethink this, and I think we need to be open to all the above, but not lose sight of the purpose, and that is demonstration of sustainable groundwater
Right.
management.
I think you're right. Both
So I
counties.
have a, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say real quick, Mike, I think what I like about both counties are giving the GSAs a voice to determine whether new well construction is consistent with GSP and adversely impacts their ability to get to sustainability. So I think that's a right and proper role for GSAs. There's some other stuff I quibble with, but I think the big picture is where we're trying to get to. Okay, Mike Tisi, sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no worries, Michael. So I have a question, and it may be a legal question, or Michael, you may be able to answer it. So one of the key differences to me in the approaches is that Stanislaus County, as Walt has laid it out, requires a GSP consistency determination to be made as a result of a referral. So Stanislaus County takes the role as the lead agency potentially, and sends the application out for referral, and the GSA makes that determination, answers yes or no, or yes or non-yes. And Merced County, as I understand it, is asking the GSA to make that consistency determination a priority on behalf of the applicant. And I'm not used to seeing it that way. I'm used to seeing a consistency determination made on referral from a lead agency. And so I'm wondering what the CEQA implications are of an agency making an a priori consistency determination not on referral. You know, in other words, the agency is the lead agency for making that determination. Is that a project under CEQA? And does that determination then trigger the requirement for the GSA to evaluate impacts, to conduct an initial study, and if there's, potential impacts, evaluate and identify mitigation in, all used to be 17 resource areas. Now it's a lot more that are not related to Sigma, but that the GSA may be burdened with answering. Am I reading that wrong? Is that a potential risk?
So from Merced County, we would say that's a question for for GSA council to determine, and I think every GSA is going to make their own determination on what CEQA is going to be required and what their policies are going to look like. And does their policy require CEQA? Does every project require CEQA? That's up to the GSA. Merced County is not dictating to the GSAs what sort of policy needs to be in place or what sort of evaluation needs to be in place. One of the reasons that Merced County did not want to do it as a referral was it was based on some of the advice from our county council. That was, if we had an application come in, we referred it out, and the GSA wanted to make some changes to that application in order to make it consistent. You can't have a 16-inch well, but you can have a 10-inch well. And they made changes, then the application comes back and it's changed. Then Merced Council thought that triggered discretion, and that's not we couldn't take a ministerial action on something that we've referred out. And so we're not referring this out. Also, you know, the Board of Supervisors, some of the supervisors recognize that when people, when customers and constituents come to the county, they're hoping for things that move kind of quickly. And when you refer something out, then you're on somebody else's timeline. And the county, you know, we're trying to make a ministerial process that's streamlined and quick. And now we're on somebody else's timeline to wait for them to get back to it. And so that was just, it's just another reason why they didn't really like that referral piece. But that's the county's position on that. Michael, maybe you have some thoughts on the legal piece.
I just think it's the Mike Tita piece of CEQA is broader than just GSP consistency. Like there's other resource areas that could create impacts that obviously the GSA is not going to look into. And so I think that's Mike's concern, that you make a determination that, yeah, we probably need to look at this, we need to modify it, like you said, therefore subject to CEQA. And then the GSA gets into this idea about, you know, are we mitigating the impacts to the railroad and Caltrans and the school district and everything else? So that'll be, I guess, more to come on that one. I mean, I doubt it for a single well, but you know, I think that's kind of what Mike's getting to.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I struggle with a little bit is, and I honestly, I don't know the answer, but you know, the concern would be that if an a priori consistency determination is a discretionary action under CEQA that qualifies as a project under CEQA, then the GSA doesn't have a choice. It has to evaluate all environmental impacts associated with that decision. But if the mere act of making a consistency determination is not a project under CEQA, then I think it's quite easy, and the GSA only involves itself in looking at consistency with the GSP. So, you know, it brings up for me the question that, you know, I mean, looking at it from, I understand the county's point of view, and that makes perfect sense. GSA is getting involved in looking at consistency. That makes sense. I mean, we're responsible for managing sustainable groundwater extraction. So that makes sense. Where we start getting into a potential gray area or an area where it may not make as much sense is reason the GSA is required to look at resource areas other than groundwater or groundwater sustainability. And secondly, and maybe this is the true underlying thing is, you know, while it may not be said in our bylaws, you know, I think when most GSAs, when they formed, considered themselves to be, you know, focused, lean organizations, and going from that does CEQA routinely is a shift. So I'm just laying that out. I think it's a really important question whether or not that consistency determination is a project under CEQA.
Well, where does that leave us? I mean, is that a bridge we cross when and if we ever face it? Or is that something that we should resolve now? Because Stennis County is not going to be very interested in putting their permitting program on hold. And I guess this is about managing risk and at the same time trying to, you know, do the right thing and protect the resource and be responsive to our customers.
And well, I think you're in better shape with your PEIR and your approach as the lead agency. I think you got nothing to worry about. It's more I think it's the Merced County.
I'm right, and I'm asking for all the above. I'm not.
Okay.
So I mean, well, I've said what I've said. One other thing though that I would like to add is that when the case comes back from the GSA that says anything other than yes, meaning that it triggers CEQA, what Stennis County has been doing, and it's consistent with the ordinances, when we go through CEQA, we make a notice of determination and certify it, all that can happen at staff level. That delegation of authority occurred through the ordinance, and the language is in part 937.060. We issue an extraction permit on the basis of the adoption of the CEQA document. And so an extraction permit is issued to a landowner for a well or a suite of wells that has conditions of issuance, reporting, extraction amounts, an allocation, some other things that are enforceable. Have we enforced them? No, we haven't. I dropped the ball. I wasn't able to do that. But the point is, the term of the permit of the GEP, groundwater extraction permit, the duration, the term of the permit by the ordinance is tied to the 5-year cycles of the GSP updates. So, Mr. Cook, you get a permit issued to you, it's only going to be as good until the next 5-year update for the particular area in which you're located for the GSP. What that means is that the GSA and the landowner and all involved, have to be actively exchanging and sharing information so that when the update comes along, this demand is now included in the plan, whereas before, because it was found to be deficient, it wasn't in compliance with the plan. So you see what I'm saying? So it begins to take on a whole new flavor of, what kind of hat the GSA will wear as a public agency in the future. Think about this. How do we handle as a GSA a proposed new subdivision or a new shopping center that is in the vested interests of the city of Turlock, for example, and it's in the West Turlock Subbasin GSA, and the GSA is asked to comment on the adequacy of the CEQA. I mean, pretty soon you've got member agencies that are advocates for a project that is now being evaluated against its sustainability insofar as groundwater is concerned. I mean, we just maybe need to take baby steps, not overthink this stuff too much, because the real problems will present themselves as we move along. They will be known and evident because we're going to run right into them. Let's not try to make up phantoms, because the reality is, we'll adaptively management, as we go along. But anyway, that's about all I had. I kind of lost my thought.
I was thinking, selfishly, for the West Turlock GSA, I would, as a staff, we put together like an environmental review committee. We get these referrals from the county and city of Modesto already.
Yeah, there you go.
Just look at them and say, are they consistent with our GSP? Will they adversely impact implementation? It's kind of like, the growth in the cities has already been factored into the increased demand over time. It's part of the GSP water budgets. Is this beyond that growth projection? I mean, there's a few things to look at. But again, selfishly for the West Turlock GSA, and then you mentioned the city of Turlock. I mean, they're trying to move more to to surface water to reduce groundwater demand. So I think it'd probably be a little bit easier on the West Turlock to review these and most of the time, I would imagine they'll be consistent with the GSP. I think it's tougher in the Merced Subbasin on the east side of this subbasin to make those determinations, particularly if new land is being converted into farmland.
Yeah, yeah. And it honors, you know, the tenet that is embedded in Sigma of this land use, water use nexus, you know. I think it builds a stronger process.
Right. Well, this has been very useful. And again, we're going straight into implementation, right? I think our GSP got submitted yesterday and we're already talking about implementation, which is good. We're in the business now. Other questions?
No rest for the worry.
No rest for the wicked, my grandma used to say.
Yeah, that too.
Any other questions or comments from the group? Yes.
I do. I am not a member of the TAC, but just as an honest question, I attended virtually the Board of Supervisors, Merced County Board of Supervisors meeting a couple days ago. And I think Mr. Maxey said something about that the county would still be the lead agency in any CEQA determinations, just for that. And sorry to go to minutiae again, but I'm wondering, Lacey, if you could just help explain that a little bit better. I'm not sure I understood.
No, the county would remain, so the ordinance stays in place and the ordinance stays status quo for any areas that are not in a GSA. And the ordinance stays in place for any areas that are on probation. So any GSAs that are I should say subbasins that are on probation with the state, then you kind of revert back to that status quo, and that's where the county would still kind of stay in that position because we're not changing that part of the ordinance. But if an application comes through and they're using that GSA exemption, which is going to be the only exemption that's available to them unless it's a domestic DeMinimis well, under this ordinance, they don't get the chance to say, we would rather just do a CEQA than go talk to the GSA. Like you can't pick and choose, and that CEQA option is no longer available if they're in a GSA with an adopted GSP. And so there are places where the county still is the lead, but under this exemption, the county is not the lead because it's just a ministerial action. And for anybody that's interested, the language of the ordinance, the red line, is available online. It's on the County of Merced.com's website. If you go to the agendas, Board of Supervisor agendas for January 25th, 2022, it's item number 53. So you click on item number 53, and then on the right-hand side, there's the actual red line of the ordinance language, so you can see how it's changed.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So I'm thinking hypothetically, our office hasn't determined anything about CEQA yet, but hypothetically, if we're doing CEQA for some of our GSA level determinations, what's the interaction with the county with that, since they're ultimately approving the permit?
The county would be a responsible agency, I think, to the lead of whatever the GSA is taking. But the county wouldn't be the lead.
Yeah, so it's kind of what Mike Tietze said earlier, the GSA would issue a notice of conformity or notice of compliance, and that would be the discretionary action is subject to CEQA. So is that right, Lacey? Something along those lines?
Well, that's a question for Jessie and her team. Is
have nothing to do with the construction of the well. It would just be a finding of conformity, which is somehow a discretionary action that needs CEQA, for which the GSA would be the lead agency.
Right.
Yeah, and I wonder for so taking off my county hat and putting on my Turlock GSA hat, I wonder if there's, I'm sure there is a place for maybe some of this discussion to be in as a either an implementation action of the GSP. I don't think it's a management action of the GSP, to be in the PEIR that the Turlock Subbasin is putting together for the GSP. Is there a way to kind of fit something in there? So if the GSA's councils do say, golly, we want you to do CEQA on just everything, then you've got that jumping off launching point in Merced County that Stanislaus County has, because otherwise you don't have that kind of something to tear off of, and it's a lot more difficult, I think, in Merced County and Stanislaus County because of the way Stanislaus set up their own PEIR.
Yeah, then you do it project by project.
Right. I'm concerned about the
I think
timeline there.
That's, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I was just concerned about the timeline with our development of our PEIR process and potential implementation of Merced County's amended ordinance in May of this year.
Yeah, I didn't mention, so that we've been talking to the GSAs about this since April of last year, and even on the west side, we're talking to them since fall of the year before about this, and had originally it went to the board in November with a recommendation of a January implementation date. At that time, enactment date, at that time the board said, oh, we'd be more comfortable with March. And then between November and January, we did hear feedback from GSAs and board members, and the board chose to push the enactment date to May 1st. And so you've got another 4 months to work out whatever, policies that the GSAs want to have in place for this. And hopefully in Merced County, since, we started outreach on this way back in April, hopefully GSAs have been thinking about this. And so they're not going to just have to do it out in 4 months, that they've already put some thought into it. Maybe not pen to paper, but at least thought on how it's going to look.
Hey, Lacey, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Okay, Walt first and then Mike Titsa. So Mike.
Okay, Walter, I'm up. Lacey, you've mentioned a couple of times, and I want to make sure I understand. You've mentioned non-GSA areas. How can that be?
We have non-GSA areas in Merced County. So in the west, in the Turlock,
How
we
can
have
it be
areas that are
not?
outside of a groundwater subbasin. They're not in a groundwater subbasin according to Bulletin 118.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant. So they're up in the hills outside the basin. They're not subject to CEQA anyway. They're just a hard rock well or what? Okay, yeah.
They're probably in the state of Jefferson too. They're probably not even in California.
They're in the state of Jefferson.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Mr. Titsa, you're up.
Yeah, just, what Lacey suggested in terms of the PEIR, I mean, I don't know if it's feasible to help sort some of this out and focus some of this and develop an approach within the context of the PEIR, but I think it sounds like a real good idea to explore that to see what might be possible. I mean, I think that the GSAs need to get advice from their council as to, does a consistency determination, is that something that triggers CEQA? And if it does, is there some way that we can use the PEIR process for projects and management actions to help to clarify what that process is going to look like, and to do some of the impact analysis to make it easier if that needs to happen. So there's maybe a number of suppositions, but I guess from where I sit, I think we probably owe it to ourselves to explore that.
Yeah, I think you're right on there, Mike. I just worry this year, we're gonna start getting applications before the PAR is done before. So we gotta kind of think in the short term. I mean, that's the concern. I know in the Merced Subbasin that now the responsibility shifted to GSAs, so that a flurry of applications are gonna start coming in. Because the county, Merced County is pretty much at a prohibition for the last few years. Now it's like well, it's still a prohibition, but there are exemptions, and so the exemption door is a little bit open for GSAs to make determinations, and so there might be a flurry of pent-up activity.
Well, and that's part of that's part of the county's thinking in going down this path that they're going to amend the ordinance. Rather than just get rid of the ordinance, because if you just get rid of the ordinance, then the doors are wide open, and we would predict that you would just see a flurry of new well applications go in, new wells, new pumping, and that just increases overdraft for all of our overdraft basins. And so, you know, the easiest path for the county would have been just to get rid of the ordinance. But I think the path to be the better partner with the GSAs for the county is to go through this amendment process.
So, so I just wanted to mention, if I can step in for just a sec, for the PEIR, we have a defined timeline where we have to get the draft completed and then submitted, because it is being funded pursuant to a grant. And that final project and everything is due to DWR, I think, by the end of September, beginning of October, if I remember correctly. So, there was no funding and scope to do modeling or those types of things. If I recall correctly, that was a big part of the Stennis County PEIR. So, so I just want to mention that. So if we incorporate this concept into the PEIR, it will require some additional work, I think, and likely funding. I just want people to know that we need to think through it and kind of come up with, you know, and talk to the consultant team if that's the direction we're wishing to go, and the timing of that is as soon as humanly possible, likely. Thanks.
I think it goes to Mike's point, talking to legal counsel and stuff like that. I mean, I see it as fairly straightforward. You just set some parameters of which wells are like DeMinimis and would get approved, like if they're not inconsistent with the GSP for your GSA. And other wells that don't fit in that box would then be subject to secret or additional analysis. So I don't think it's not like what Walt's gone through, I don't think, with his PEIR. This will be part of another management action, I guess you could say, programmatically. But again, let's talk with Valerie, at least for our side, and maybe follow up with Meredith and her gang. ESA, right? The consultant? Yeah, with ESA, and kind of go from there. All right. Well, we beat this one to death. That was
Well, you know, I guess I want to keep on beating it, but not really. Todd is updating all the things that have to happen, or maybe already have, for the GSP, and without trying to, you know, split hairs, you know, I'm going to consider that after midnight, January 31st, so 5 minutes after midnight, on February 1st, a new application comes in the Turlock Subbasin, and it's in Stennis County, we're going to start pushing out this process. And we'll grow as we go. Is that right? Green lights for that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody. And again, there'll be more follow-up on this. It's kind of moving as an early implementation action. So So, we opened this meeting in honor of Walt. So this is a good meeting for you, Walt, to be engaged. So appreciate that. When you're working hard right to the last minute. That's what I love about you. Keep that up in your next endeavor. We'll put you on a little bit here too. Okay, anything else on item number 6, well construction? Okay, Sigma related updates, our normal opportunity for TAC members to discuss and provide updates on issues related to Sigma. We'll go through those, and at the end, Walt, if you want to say anything to the group before we sign off for the last time, that would be good too. But let's start with Herb. Anything on communications and outreach?
Yeah, thank you. I just have, I'm looking here at my notes. I just have a couple items. It's been mentioned a little bit already in passing, but we had a public scoping meeting last night for the draft PEIR and to scope it and to talk about its creation. And so we held that last night, and I had a slide up beforehand before the meeting, but we're looking for comments on the scope and creation of the PEIR before February 7th at 5 p.m. And information about that is available at turlockgroundwater.org. There's a way to submit comments and an address for that. And so if anyone's interested in how that meeting went or what discussions were had, there was actually one public comment as well given orally. And that is available online at the Turlock Groundwater site on the meeting page. So others may have more to mention about that as we go through updates, but that's one thing as far as outreach that I'll mention. And then I'll just also mention that Chapter 3 of the GSP, was submitted or is currently being submitted along with the other chapters and appendices of the GSP. And just to highlight there, we have, in terms of all the meetings we've held, we've had a lot of meetings over the past few years, all productive. But of those, the highlights that I mentioned here are that are shown in Chapter 3 would be that we've had a total of 91 combined or individual meetings of technical advisory committees. And then we've had 72 combined GSA meetings throughout the Subbasin, and some 30 or so workshops of various technical or community or virtual forms. So it's a kind of a rundown, and there's a lot more information that's going to be in that chapter than many of you are aware of. So just some highlights there as we get close to submitting formally the GSP to the Department of Water Resources. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is continue to visit the website for updates. We'll still have updates there. And continue to stay tuned for emails that we send out to the list. So if people want to be informed of what's going on in the Subbasin, all the same rules or recommendations, I would say, still apply. Everyone to visit our site, to connect with us on social media, and specifically to visit our site to sign up for our emails is a huge way to get information. So that's all I have in the way of update without stealing anyone else's thunder, hopefully. And I will stop there.
Thank you, Herb. Next up, TAC meeting dates for 2022. Who's got that one?
I could take it or you can take it. It's up to you.
I got notes, I guess, but Debbie, go ahead, please.
Okay, so as you can see below, it lists a special meeting and a regular meeting for the next meeting dates. As we move into implementation, as the ad hoc was meeting a couple weeks ago, there was a thought that perhaps we keep them on the schedule and calendar so that it's easier to meet, but not meet if not needed. But after further thought, I think the suggestion is to have on the calendar the monthly meetings for the joint TAC. I think East Turlock may also have some additional meetings on top of that. And then schedule any special meetings as needed, as opposed to trying to keep it on the calendar. So that's the concept right now. So please keep the fourth Thursday of each month at 2 p.m. That's the current schedule and time on your calendar. And I think Jennifer's going to get meeting dates out to everyone. I'm putting a task on your list. Sorry, Jennifer, I apologize.
My notes indicate that Jennifer will be sending calendar invites for these dates.
Oh, great.
So
Thank
that
you.
would be good. So yeah, so the joint TAC, and I think, now we're going to implementation, there may actually be more meetings of the West Turlock TAC just as a singular group to work on things. And obviously we've got to work through the environmental review process for new wells. So plenty of work ahead of us.
Yeah, so we may have to, you make a really good point, Michael, of scheduling individual West Turlock and East Turlock TAC meetings to work through programs and processes and what have you. Yeah.
Okay, GSP submittal status, Debbie?
So I had hoped to tell you that I had pushed the submit button, but we're not quite there yet. We're close. We found a couple links that needed to be fixed and those kind of things. And so we've been working through that QA/QC to, address the little things that pop up. And so I'm waiting on one last item, and then we hope to push submit. So we'll let you all know, and I'll communicate with Jennifer, and then we can get information out to folks to let them know that it's been submitted and posted online and all of that.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Who gets to push the button submit?
I think it might be me, but I could let somebody else do it if they'd rather.
Just curious.
Yeah, it's kind of a nerve-wracking little thing. Like, oh my gosh, is it right?
I think you've earned it, Debbie.
Well,
Helping shepherd all this through. I think you should push it with gusto.
I'll do that.
All right, can you push it before Friday night? Because otherwise you got to come in Sunday to do it.
No. Not this weekend.
I was gonna say, so we got 24 hours basically to get this thing in. So, and Modesto had their meeting yesterday or the day before to finalize the adoption. They redo the adoption process. There's a noticing snafu or technological snafu or something. So our friends up in Sturgis had to do a do-over, I think. So we're all getting there. Okay, GSP annual report. Debbie, I saw you've been emailing about that today too. Can you update the group?
Yeah, I don't have a huge update on that. The focus has been on finalizing the GSP. But now that the consultant team has kind of worked through that, they're turning back to the annual report. I have two more agencies. Actually, I heard back from one of them earlier today. So I'm still waiting for data from one more agency. And so I've reached out to them again. It may very well be that they don't have any data, but they haven't told me that. So so that's the latest on that. And also we're in the process of coordinating between the East and the West on the beginning of the implementation of the monitoring effort for the GSP, because we'll need to report on the most recent data in the annual report. And so, so we're planning on scheduling that for the first couple weeks in March. I think that's the target at this point. And so on the West side, I think we'll need to schedule a meeting with and a coordinating meeting with those entities with the monitoring wells that we'll need to monitor and coordinate that process to make sure everybody's on the same page. And I think they're doing the same thing on the eastern side. So there's that as well. And then the plan is to come back to the tax at our meeting in February with a more detailed report on where we are with the annual report and hopefully some data and information to share, because it'll be about a month out from when the annual report is actually due. That's on April 1st. So that's my report on that.
Thank you. The last one is the grants.
Yes, okay. So we have the PEIR underway. We talked a little bit about that earlier. The notice of preparation was issued on January 7th. We hosted a scoping meeting last night. There were a couple members of the public there, if I counted correctly. We did get one comment related to ensuring that, and those who were there, correct me if I don't say it quite right. It related to ensuring that we evaluate the potential impacts to the river as a result of the projects and management actions. So that was one comment, and the comment period is still open for anyone who wishes to provide additional comments. That comment period, I think, it ends on the 8th, is it, or the 6th? Somewhere around in there. Herb, could you? I can't remember the exact date. So if you could look it up on the website and let us know, that would be awesome. And then the ad hoc committee who's working on the PEIR has reviewed the project's description section of the PEIR and provided comments back to the technical team or the consultant team. And they're going to be making some revisions to that. And then we'll be getting that out to the tax for their review, because we want to make sure all the individual agencies have an opportunity to provide comments on the draft. And so that's planned for next month. And then we'll be coming to the tax with a more detailed report, I think in March. At least that's the plan.
Okay.
Wells, I think I reported last time that we have 6 out of the 7 monitoring wells installed. The last one has to wait until it dries out a little bit, but we have been having dry weather, so perhaps there's an opportunity. And those new wells will be able to be incorporated into the monitoring for this coming March. So that's a good thing. And the GRAT, we've been undergoing training on that. If there are agencies that are interested that haven't been able to participate, reach out to us, and we'll get you some information on that. And that's all I have for those.
Fantastic, Debbie. Thank you. Okay, Walt, you're signing off. Any words of wisdom you want to tell us? Save more money, retire early, something like that?
One word, then you guys can look it up and then figure out how to do it. Usufruct.
Oh, usufructory rights?
Well, no, just, yeah, usufruct.
Mhm.
And think of that in terms of groundwater management, and it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Because nobody owns the resource, because everybody owns it. And so we're all borrowing. And we're using it to, grow food and provide water to our people, and all living things depend on it. And so it's our job to use it wisely and not waste it and not harm it. So I believe very much in the concept embedded in usufruct, which is a right to use something that you don't own, but you don't have a right to harm it or waste it. And I think that fits very well with what I sort of think of as Sigma and what we're trying to accomplish for future generations, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's a great way to sign off, Walt. So thank you for that. And again, good luck in your retirement, and don't be a stranger. Come by and just don't be one of those annoying public participation people. That's all I ask.
Okay. I'll ask Jennifer to. I'll send her my personal email. I'll stay in the loop.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Okay, our next meetings are scheduled for well, this is Thursday, February 10th and Thursday, February 24th. We may not need both of those. So again, Jennifer's going to send out appointments and we'll go from there. So with that, I'll take a motion for adjournment from the West Turlock GSA TAC.
City Modesto, Miguel Alvarez, make a motion.
Okay, yeah. I think Walt, you seconded it, right?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Aye.
West Turlock is adjourned. Over to you, Lacey.
And a motion from the East Turlock GSA TAC to adjourn.
Ward moves to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Matt will second.
Great. Motioned and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, and we're adjourned. Thank you.
Congratulations, Walt.
Take care, Walt. All the best, everyone.
Congratulations, Walt.